Good morning, everyone. Appreciate everybody signing in. We still have just a few more minutes before we start, but wanted to thank you for being here and being part of this meeting. So hang in there. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our board meeting, and thank you for taking the time to be part of this important work. I appreciate everyone's participation and engagement in our meetings. This really is a good board and a good organization to be a part of. So we're getting pretty good at this virtual meeting thing. I wish that wasn't the case, but I think everybody's kind of getting accustomed to those ideas. So nonetheless, we'll get started. I have a few reminders and just make sure everybody's aware. As you guys know, we make this available to the public, and so we are being live streamed on YouTube, so the public can join us on YouTube. So make sure to wave and say hi to all the people out there in YouTube land. Thanks for joining us and being interested in the work of this board. Because of that, and because we are virtual, as you guys know, try to keep your microphones on mute during the meeting unless called on, or if you have a question. I think the best way to do that would be to use our chat feature. So if you don't have that open or are not familiar where to find that on WebEx, take a few minutes to explore around on some of the settings and find that chat feature, because we're going to be using that to vote too. We've got, I think, 3 votes today, 3 or 4 votes. And so the way we'll do that is we'll use the chat feature to do that. People can make a motion and second, and we can have discussion. I'll ask for discussion questions, and to get all that done, we'll use the chat feature. All right. So let's see what else we want to do. Yeah, the way that'll work is through chat. If there, we won't ask for a roll call vote. We'll just ask if there's any oppositions or abstentions, and then if there are none, we'll assume that everybody else on the meeting is in favor of the motions being made. So if you haven't been with us before, that's how that will work. Also want to make you aware, you're going to be getting a document after this meeting. Last year when our state plan was approved, our federal partners required us to increase the number of board members we had on our board. So Governor Lee signed an executive order this past December that reflected that membership increase. Well, our bylaws have to match the executive order. So we revised the bylaws and we got those approved by our executive committee just this past January. So after this meeting, Eiler Bradley is going to be sending you those bylaws so that you'll have a copy of them. And that's really the only change. You'll see that membership increase reflected. So when you get that document, that's what that's all about. It's nothing we have to vote on here. Executive committee already took care of it, and it's really just to match those federal requirements. If you've been on our board, or even if you're new to the board, I hope you have a really clear understanding of our roles and responsibilities, and they're all pretty well outlined in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We've also have them in our orientation materials for this board, but as we've discussed at several meetings, we don't want to just be the board that meets expectations of those responsibilities that we outline. We want to be a high-performing board. And as a board, as you've heard us say, we expect a higher standard for our board. So in order to help us do that, what we want to do is build some structure around those high standards. And we want to make our roles and responsibilities a little more actionable, a little more measurable. And the way we're going to do that is we have this document. The state board chairs from around the country developed a document several years ago, and it addresses becoming a high-performing state board. Think of it like a good housekeeping seal of approval for state workforce boards. And so if we're meeting these standards, it just elevates it to a higher level of performance. So there were a lot of states that adopted a version of that as a guide and a strategy and operations for their state boards. And so we're looking to do the same thing. We want to be known not just as a board who meets the requirements, but as a board who expects that higher standard. So you'll soon see what that document looks like. It should be a reflection of what we've been discussing in these recent meetings. It's going to have metrics that track how we're doing against the goals of the programs we oversee. And then we'll put some benchmarks in there. So, here's where we are. Here's the measurement of what we consider to be good. And then here's the measurement of what we consider to be great. And so we won't just have the number, we'll have the number compared to what our expectation is. So after we get this board's standards and metrics set, we're also going to use that same document, and then we'll set certification standards and metrics for our local boards too. All right. For the local boards, some of the duties may be, just a little different, but for the most part, there should be some consistency there. And we want to be the standard of excellence as we guide our local boards to conduct their work with the same guiding principles we will embrace. So if we're going to set that standard for ourselves, we're going to set it for the local boards, but we're not going to set it for the local boards without having our own metrics established first. So anyway, we'll have more information about that process throughout 2021. I'm sure it'll be discussed at the rest of this year's board meetings. And I think you actually might hear a little bit more of it as we talk about metrics even in this board meeting. So any questions about that? If you do, just type them in the chat. We'll try to address those. All right. Otherwise, let's turn it over to Eiler. She gets the fun job of calling roll and making sure that we have a quorum. So Eiler, it's up to you to help us with that.
Thank you, Chairman Barry, and good morning, everyone. As I call your name, please confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. If you are representing by proxy, please state your name for the record. Martha Axford,
I'm present, and I represent the East Region Local Board.
Brandy Faust for State Senator Paul Bailey. Once again, Brandy Faust. Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Present.
Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell-Street for Commissioner Clarence Carter. Once again, Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell-Street. Jason Bates.
Present.
Tim Berry.
Present.
Sarah Noel for State Representative Clark Boyd. Once again, Sarah Noel. Ronnie Brewer.
Present.
Mayor Kevin Brooks.
Mayor Brooks is present.
Jonathan Cantrell. Once again, Jonathan Cantrell. Michelle Falcone.
Present.
Ben Ferguson. Once again, Ben Ferguson.
Present, representing Southwest Region.
Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Present, Southeast Tennessee.
Ann Hatcher. Once again, Ann Hatcher.
Present.
Christine Hopkins. Once again, Christine Hopkins. Rick Isaacson.
Present.
J. Paul Jackson.
Present.
Assistant Commissioner Mandy Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Jeff McCord.
Present.
Vonda McDaniel. Once again, Vonda McDaniel.
Vonda McDaniel is present.
Mayor E.L. Morton.
Present.
Policy Director Tony Nicknajad for Governor Bill Lee.
Present.
Greg Persinger.
Present.
Stuart Price.
Present.
Barry Ray.
Present.
Director Ann Thompson for Commissioner Bob Rolfe.
Good morning, I'm present.
Chief of Programs Jean Luna for Commissioner Penny Schwinn.
Present.
Kyle Spurgeon. Once again, Kyle Spurgeon. Jeff Vance.
Present.
Kevin Vaughn. Once again, Kevin Vaughn. Rusty Vi.
Present.
Kevin Bond's present. Sorry.
All right, no problem. And Ron Wade.
Present. Greater
If-
Memphis.
All right. If you could not respond audibly, please respond in the chat now to confirm your attendance. And once again, good morning, everyone. Chairman Barry, we have a quorum.
Excuse me, Eiler, this is Sherelle Campbell Street. I actually responded in the chat earlier, but I'm here representing Commissioner Clarence Carter, Department of Human Services.
Thank you, Deputy Campbell Street. We have you recorded.
Thank you, Eiler. I appreciate that. Glad to know we have a quorum so we can keep moving. And the first business that we need to take care of is just approval of the minutes. Those were submitted to you prior to this meeting, so I trust that everyone had an opportunity to review those. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? You can indicate that in the chat. Looks like Ann has made that motion and Michelle Falcone has seconded. So let's ask for some discussion. If you have discussion, just put that in the chat and we'll bring that up. Let me give a minute. Okay, seeing no discussion, I'm going to ask for any opposition or abstention. Otherwise, I will assume that everyone is in agreement with the minutes as presented. And seeing none, we will say that those minutes have been approved as presented. So Commissioner McCord, how are you? Good to see you. What
I'm
words of
well.
wisdom? Yeah, what words of wisdom do you have for our board today?
I think that may have been gone a long time ago, Tim. But I want you to be careful on that while you walk. I'm not so sure you're not violating OSHA guidelines, so I need to keep a close
No, don't worry.
eye on you.
I'm tied off. It's all safe.
You're tied off. Okay.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have more than an 8-foot ledge there, we should be good. I'll be very brief. I want to echo Chairman Barry's thank you. I know these are long mornings into the day, and everybody on this call is very, very busy, but I don't think it's an understatement or hyperbole to say our work is more important now than it's ever been, and it's always been high purpose as we come out of the pandemic and get people back to work and the economy humming again and prosperity flowing again. It matters. It matters what this board does and what we do as an agency to execute under your leadership. So thank you. One other just very quick thing, and once we meet in person, we'll get to know this person a little bit better, but I do want to introduce, and I'm not going to make him say anything, Dwayne Scott, who has come on board our agency as a deputy commissioner. He brings a lot of private sector and entrepreneurial experience, including being on that private side, working with the federal government. So we're and you will get to know him better once we're able to actually see each other in person. So we'll do those introductions more formally then. But with that, Chairman, that concludes my report. How about that?
Very good. Well, thanks. It's good to hear from you. All right. So unemployment insurance, I know, is a very hot topic, and a lot of information about that in the news. I know we get a lot of good input and updates on that from the social media feed from the Workforce Development Board. So I appreciate those updates. But Rusty, Assistant Commissioner Feltz, why don't you give us an update on unemployment insurance and let us know where we are with that.
Yes, sir. Be glad to. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you, everybody, for having me again. Sometimes I come with that bullseye on my back. You don't know whether you're really welcome or not, whether you're being lured into something. But I will say thank you to the board and the workforce team and the partners and you, Chairman Berry, for always making me feel welcome. Friendly faces do matter in these times. I'm just going to give some quick updates. I'm not going to bore everybody with a lot of the stuff that we went over the past year over and over, but I am going to give some updates on what we've done, where we are, and maybe even then, Chairman Berry, talk about some new things that we're facing as an organization, not just me, but you guys in workforce services efforts. You know, in a normal year, we pay out probably close to 200 million, give or take, in unemployment benefits. I think it's important to note this past year we paid out 6.3 billion, and that is with a B, in benefits to eligible Tennesseans. Over 1 million new claims. That's not counting additional claims that were already in a benefit year. So you can see the extreme amounts of work we've had to deal with. The federal programs, of course, compound that. Trying to do unemployment for programs that have never existed and implement those correctly and things like that. I think Commissioner McCord can back this up. This is a number he quotes a little more than me. I didn't know it until he actually told me. My group and the department in the UI division have worked in excess of 22 years of overtime in the past year. Commissioner, you can nod your head if I'm saying that correctly, but that is an extreme and represent that as well. I do look for them to be up a little bit this week because of the benefit year endings and the new extension, but I think we're seeing some good signs there. I think that goes to another point we get asked all the time. Has there been any change to the job search requirement? And the answer to that is no. We put that back in place back in the fall. I'm glad to say Tennessee was actually one of the first states to do that. There are some states that right up until the new extension did not even make those efforts. So I think we're where we're at in Tennessee because of those very things and the efforts of workforce services and the partners and what they're doing, trying to get people back to work. I get asked all the time, Rusty, have you learned anything, you know, in the past year? You know, they say experience is the best teacher, but pain and discomfort can be part of experience too. And so, yes, I have learned something. My team has learned something. You know, we were absolutely forced, regardless of the workload and the heavy lift, we were absolutely forced to stop and look at some things that we could do differently. And I'm glad to say that we are looking at and exploring and developing some new automations that we didn't have before that we were forced to take a look at, and we're making a lot of progress in that regard, in our pending claims numbers and the way we can do things. And I think it's going to help us. You know, I've been very transparent that we need to look at being a national leader, maybe going towards a new unemployment system in the future. And so we've got a lot of good things that we can take on that down that path with us too. I can't really speak to any trends, Chairman Berry. You asked me specifically about that with the numbers that we're seeing, other than I will say a lot of the filed claims that we're seeing now still relate to the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance for contract 1099 workers. And so that leads me back to the point that we have to be ever vigilant with fraud, because we serve so many masters in unemployment insurance. You know, we're federally funded, and we're, you know, asked to administer a program by federal standards and state standards, but we have to be extremely careful paying out that federal money, because there's a lot of ambiguity in the federal programs. And so we have to be extremely careful and do our research before we pay them as best we can. I think our biggest challenge, like you and I talked about months ago, Chairman Berry, is that we've got to get that workforce back where they belong, because we're now going to be encountering that period when the federal extensions run out. And we're going to have a lot of Tennesseans in our workforce that have empty base periods. And that could be an uncomfortable period of time if we don't get them back to work. That leads me to one of my final points. that you and I have discussed before, Chairman Barry, is that we're hearing every day, all day from employers around the state, I need people to come back to work. I need people to come back to work. And so I've got 2 links that I'm going to share with Eiler so she can get out to everybody involved that we can pass on to employers. We have a link for them to share when they're trying to call their workforce back and they won't return. And we also have a link to share for when employers are interviewing new applicants and then maybe offer them the job and they don't come back. I think it's extremely important to know that our employers are trying to stay alive. They're trying to exist. They're very busy, but that's a part of fraud and unemployment. And we need to know that, and we need to encourage it from every known avenue. In closing, I'll just say, you know, as far as goals for my division, you know, on a personal level, you know, a goal of mine is to maybe when we have executive staff meetings for me to be able to sit at the table again. And Commissioner McCord welcomed me back to that group. I'm totally kidding. By that, you know, when you wear that bullseye on your back for almost a year, it gets tiresome. But I have had a lot of support from Deputy Commissioner Thomas, from Commissioner McCord, from our whole department. He assures me about once a week, Rusty, this isn't an unemployment insurance problem. It's a departmental problem. So we're going to be there to help you and support you. You know, I'm one of the last few to come from that setting where we learned unemployment in a job center and then turned right around face to face and tried to put them back to work. So nobody appreciates that partnership any more than me, and that my clientele is your clientele. So I really appreciate the invite. I appreciate the support I get from you and the board and Workforce Services, and thank you for having me.
Very good, Rusty. I'll ask you a question and I'll open the questions up to others. So as you're thinking about a question you might have for Rusty and typing it into the chat, Rusty, do you think that, you know, you talked about businesses needing workers and telling you every day, I need them to come back, need them to come back. Do you think that's because they've left a job and they're available to work, but the jobs that are open are not the jobs they left? You know, like in other words, I left a job because it closed, but that business hasn't opened back up. So now there's other jobs open, but it's not the one I had. And so maybe they're reluctant to go into the different job. Is that real, or is that just a hunch?
No, so that's a real thing. There's a lot of employers that have managed to stay open, but we need to face the reality that there was a lot of employers that unfortunately did not make it, and so you combine that with maybe what region of the state they're in and certain other factors, and it could be that they're reluctant to branch out and try something new. But at the same time, it's something that we need to be cognizant of in our role that we all play, because fear or no, we need to encourage people to get back out there in the workforce if they can't return to that employer, because these unemployment federal benefits and these extensions and additions are going to run out at some point. We all have to face that reality. So yes, sir, that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah. So a lot of the work for this group and everybody that supports it is for these folks that have left something and now just isn't there for them to go back to. We've got to make them, you know, feel brave, or, you know, use our services to teach them that new skill or make them feel comfortable in going into that new company or that new role that
Yes, sir. And understand the urgency too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. What other questions does this group have for Rusty? I haven't seen any come in chat, but that's okay. He's explained it well, so maybe there are none. Okay.
Chairman Barry, this is Jason Bates. I just had a quick question for clarification to make sure I heard it right. You said that we went from 200 million a year, Rusty, in unemployment to 1.6 billion, did you say?
No, sir. Thank you for the question. Normally we pay out in a normal year of unemployment right around $200 million in unemployment benefits. This past year, we paid out 6.3 billion.
Oh, 6.3 billion. My goodness. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ron Wade, you had a question?
Yes, I did. I was trying to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
So Rusty, I'm not sure if you deal with a motivation level. In West Tennessee, oftentimes it's difficult in our work with employers because their amount of money that they'll start is less than what they're getting from unemployment services. And I do realize that that's going to run out, as you mentioned. My question to you is, have you seen that same type of response from employers needing and wanting workers to come back? And basically they say, well, you're not paying me as much as I am getting by staying at home. And how do you deal with that problem?
To answer your question, Mr. Wade, absolutely. I hear it all the time. And it boils down to simple math. I think when the $600 that we were putting on top of unemployment, when that stopped and went to 300, or stopped for a while period, and then we went to the 300, there's a certain part of the workforce that had to do math and we're forced back out there. And I don't really know another way to say it. We are asked that all the time because I think, Mr. Wade, sometimes it's interpreted as, well, Rusty and unemployment are giving them this money, and so it's making them not want to re-enter the workforce. It doesn't come from me. I'm just asked to administer it, but we do hear that all the time, to your point. And I think we're coming to a critical time. When those benefits end, you're going to have a mad scramble for some of those jobs. So that's a good question.
Yeah, and I think also, this is where the work you're doing against fraud is going to make a big help, and the question that requires them to say, yes, I looked for work, is also going to help. So the fact that we're keeping that requirement in there is a big deal, because that wasn't the case in the initial act. So I'm glad we were able to keep that, and I think that'll help keep it down.
And to Mr. Wade's point, it's all the more reason to share those links that I'm going to send out. Employers, I know they're struggling and I know they're busy, but we need to know that.
Okay. Yeah, any help that you can give would be appreciated, because we respond to them, every day, and we push for a livable, sustainable wage. And so it's just a balance. So.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then Rusty, Ben Ferguson's just trying to clarify that new federal payment is set to expire at the end of September. Is that correct?
Chairman Barry, I don't have that in my notes right now. By my memory, I want to say the program ends September 6th, but it is in September. I don't have that exact date right in front of me, and I apologize, but it is in September.
Chairman
Okay.
Barry, September 4th.
Okay. Yeah, right around Labor Day then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. If anyone has other questions for Rusty, just send them to Isla Bradley, and she'll try to get those answered. She'll follow up with Rusty and get them answered for you guys directly. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about our committee meetings, and we'll have some votes on some policy approvals there. So let's go to the Oversight Committee. Ann Hatcher, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Get my notes together.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Oversight Committee had updates from 2 of these new work groups. So our first update was from the Fiscal and Reporting work group. The goal or the objective of this work group is to create dashboards and measure the effectiveness of the workforce strategy across the department. So it's made up of representatives from DHS, Adult Education, and Workforce Services. So through the creation of shared KPIs, shared objectives, and the measures that sit under them, we kind of see how we're working as a workforce system across the state and across departments. They met in January and February, and by the time we have our next committee meeting in June, we'll expect to see their identification of what those key KPIs will be, and possibly some benchmarks or some information of how other states are looking at that information. Also within this report out, we did review a proposed change to the reserve allocation methodology for rapid response, and I believe that Ivan Greenfield will review that with the full board later. We did vote to approve that for the full board. Then the Joint Monitoring and Compliance Workforce Group reported out to us. The purpose of that work group is to ensure seamless execution of programs and consistent service delivery, again, across all the local areas and across those 3 agencies. They also met several times in January and February, and their first set of goals and objectives are to create joint policies around co-enrollment, assessment and eligibility, and then one-stop design and oversight. And so in June, when our committee meets again, we will review their draft co-enrollment and one-stop design policies. We did review a policy on allowable and unallowable costs. I think that policy was sent to all of the board members in the pre-read. There were no changes to that policy, and so we approved it, and we bring that forward to the full board for approval today.
Very good, and I hope everyone had a chance to review that as it was sent to you. So we'll ask for a vote on that, and first we'll need a motion to accept the change to the allowable and unallowable cost policy as presented. Looking for that motion in the chat. Mayor Brooks has made the motion. And looks like Jason Bates has seconded. So we'll ask for any other discussion or questions about that policy. Okay, and seeing none, I will ask for any opposition or abstention to the vote. Otherwise, we'll assume that everyone is in favor of the policy changes as presented. And seeing none, that policy change is approved as presented. Thank you, Ann. Any other questions for Ann or the Oversight Committee?
I just want to thank the staff supporting the committee and the full board for the excellent communication about this meeting, all the materials well in advance. That was so very helpful. So thanks to the whole group. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to the Operations Committee, and Stuart Price is the chair of that committee. And so tell us what you guys discussed today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We likewise had an outstanding committee meeting. It was great presentations from staff on work groups as well. For us, it was a job seeker work group, business service work group, and apprenticeship work-based learning work group. And, you know, we opened up just complimenting the state staff and all those working in workforce development on their sense of ownership and outcomes, and not being deterred by the challenges that are in front of them. So we as a committee just want to applaud what's being done and how we're moving forward. Following on from those opening comments, to hear these presentations where we're stepping back and bringing together interagency teams to address what we offer for both job seekers, for employers, and in the third case, for people engaging in the apprenticeship programs, is an absolutely great step and one that we applaud. For us, the presentation we received, it was encouraging that that these groups are bringing together not only labor and workforce development representation, but Department of Human Services and education partners and departments of correction and mental health and substance abuse partners and community partners, all coming together to address how do we best present a comprehensible and clear product to the people we serve across the full spectrum. It was very encouraging to hear this and just applaud their efforts. In terms of the specifics, in the business services track to serve employers, the goal there is to create a trained workforce to meet current industry needs. They're going to focus on empowering the Tennessee workforce system to integrate its services, allowing partners and community organizations to work collaboratively and seamlessly. These sorts of goals and objectives are exactly what we need in order to deliver the sort of product that you described earlier that is great. We're definitely on the right path to that. In terms of the apprenticeship program, same caliber of presentation and effort is occurring. Their purpose is to create a trained workforce to meet current industry needs and establishing scalable partnerships that meet employer workforce development needs by developing and implementing a registered apprenticeship programs. It's again very thorough, just very encouraging, and also we made the observation too that as we move forward and implement technologies like we're using now, one thing that's evident and we all need to remember is that relationship matters, and coming together and bringing different agencies together to meet and sit and focus and discuss, and in this case on a quarterly basis, to establish goals, to establish metrics to measure progress is imperative and is exactly what will carry us to the great goals that we have in store for ourselves. And so applaud their efforts. They're on the right track for sure. And again, it was an outstanding presentation. I couldn't do it justice to try to capture it in a brief recap here. But nonetheless, I'm just very excited about it. We also had two policies to review and recommend for approval. One is the Senior Community Service Employment Program policy. This policy explains in detail different aspects of the program, such as participant wages, duration limits, grievances, termination reasons, etc. It addresses participant wages, duration limits, approved participant breaks, post-agency closures, participant terminations, and grievance and complaint procedures. It's a consolidation of 6 formerly separate policies. Otherwise, no changes have been made during the consolidation process. And then the second policy was the priority of service for adults, veterans, and eligible spouses to provide guidance to local workforce development boards on the requirements for providing priority of service to all covered persons and identified populations. It defines a priority of service, defines priority populations, establishes covered persons who are seeking WIO services. They must be provided a priority service at their point of entry, establishes employment and training priority of service, explains the order to apply the priority of service, and establishes local workforce development board policy requirements. This likewise is a combination of 2 policies into a single policy, the Workforce Adult Priority of Service Guidance and the Veteran and Eligible Spouse Priority of Service Policy. So otherwise, no changes to either. And so the committee forwards those for approval.
Very good. Okay, so we'll vote on both of those policy changes at once. And so what we're looking for is a motion to accept the change of the policy, the priority of service policy and the SC/SEP policy as presented by the Operations Committee. All right, I see Ann was the first to make that motion, and it looks like Bill made the second. So I'll ask for discussion or any questions that you would have about the policies that Stuart was discussing. Okay, and seeing no questions, I will ask for any opposition or abstention to those policy changes. Otherwise, we'll assume that everybody is in approval of those changes. And seeing none, those two policy changes have been approved as presented. Stuart, thank you. Any other questions for the Operations Committee? Thank you, Stuart, for leading that group and giving us a good report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're moving on to the Innovation Committee. Kevin Vaughn is the chairman of that group. So Kevin, tell us what was discussed.
Can you hear me, Mr. Berry? Thank you. I cut my video off there because usually it makes it choppy if I don't, but we had a lot of good speakers this morning. We had Miss Teresa Smith, who gave an introduction to the WIOA work group. This work is a group of team representatives from the state departments and divisions. The work groups were formed to collaborate across Tennessee departments and to work on identified issues within the state plan. The work groups report on a rolling quarter. The Innovations Committee is looking forward to seeing the outcomes of this group in the months ahead. Next, we had Mr. Ryan Allen, who's the special reports within the WIOA work group. Ryan went over the goals and objectives for the work group, what projects that were active and what tools they use. He also mentioned milestones of the dashboard and its effectiveness, and there'll be more great work coming from this group. Also, we kind of ran a little short on time with Miss Jennifer. We're going to try to have her back. She spoke on Southern Middle Tennessee's best practices. From what she was able to tell us in her time, she had 13 counties. Each county had an AJC in each group. There were some requirements for this youth in-school program. It gave work experience in the program. They work and they get paid for the work that they do. There's some work readiness classes that set up prior to the program that teaches the students soft skills. Others go out on their own time during career night or graduation and seek out students that need to enter into this program. We did have a policy that we were going to go over today, but it was removed. It was the auxiliary aids and ADA policy. This policy was noted on the innovations agenda also, and the full boards, as I just said. It was withdrawn at this time. This policy needed additional review by the vocational rehabilitation. This policy will be presented again on the June 18th board meeting. And at this time, this board doesn't have any policies to be approved. And special thanks to everybody who gave their time and effort in presenting to our committees this morning. Thank you.
Very good. I always like to hear about us being able to feed our workforce pipeline with young students. And so anything we can do to give them the resources they need to move forward in that. So that's always good to hear. Like you said, no approvals here on this one. So any questions for the Innovation Committee? Okay, Kevin, thank you. And to all the folks who were part of that. All right, we're a little bit ahead of schedule and we're going to stay that way. So let's take it's 10:35. So let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 10:45. All right, so take a little break, refill your coffee cups, whatever you need, and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Okay, feel free to join back in and make sure everybody's back in engagement with us. Very good. I see people joining in. I always enjoy hearing from Assistant Administrator Ivan Greenfield. He always has some great reports for us so that we can get an idea of where we are in the financial end of our work. So Ivan, if you're ready, we'll get ready for your report.
Good morning, Chairman, and thank you. Hey, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to share, if that's okay, share my screen. If I can do so here. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. Hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint okay. I need to expand it or anything, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to quick fiscal review. Starting with just a review of our Title I funding and expenditures for the 6 months, July through December 2020. We want to kind of take a review of last year's state reserve budget and leading us to a decision and approval on let me start the slideshow. I got a request here to start the slideshow. Let's start the slideshow. Hopefully everyone can, that's expanded. That thumbs up, Chairman Barry. Somebody, can we see the slideshow okay by the numbers?
I can see it fine. I just keep going.
Thank you. Okay. That's right. Okay, so we're talking fiscal review leading to the PY21 state reserve funding budget review and approval, and then kind of ending with some highlight on some key initiatives. As a kind of a cleanup thing, we're gonna at the end of the slide there are some attachments that provide further details on some of the numbers. So jumping right in. As it's been stated, we see just such a expansion of collaboration among the various partners, has been mentioned already around the committee-specific work groups, several roundtable discussions, as well as several roundtable discussions with our partners, and this all helps to align and blend our resources so that we can have greater flexibility in the funding itself, and also increase the number of job seekers and employers that we can provide services to. And then also we're looking to have just measured outcomes. A lot of talk has been made about the key performance indicators and other metrics, and just how we can implement I'm gonna mute my cameras, maybe to reduce resources, as they say. There we go. Let's just do that. Forget about it. Keep moving. And so the whole intent is just to kind of improve overall performance, right? Joint reporting, monitoring, that will allow us to take out those resources and better allocate them to where they're needed most, and where we can experience the best return on our funding and improve overall accountability and performance. And so the next slide is just a quick look at these numbers. We're looking at authorized funding of about $52.8 million year to date. Again, first 6 months. You see that these quarterly projections for the authorized funding is based on just the 25% the total annualized allocation. Those have a tendency to change as we sometimes get funding from different programs in increments, and so throughout the year, that total funding can increase. And so we just, for presentation purposes, we just take 25% as of each quarter end of what that total number would be. You see that the year-to-date expenses or operational costs are at about just over 45 million. Quarter on quarter, kind of flat, just at 22.4 and 22.7. And then with our about a third of the cost being towards administrative, and 30 million, just under 30 million going out to grantees in the form of reimbursements. You can also see some greater detail around those numbers on attachment 2, and then we see a net position there of basically 7.6 million. Now, again, that's just what's available at the end of second quarter, but not necessarily like a revenue number in the sense of a general P&L statement. And these are just the narratives around what I just kind of covered. Kind of covered everything that's there. Looking at some participant costs, we see that about 9.4 million in participant costs. You see the first quarter was relatively low, and we would expect that, but we see a nice rebound in second quarter, almost twofold, or more than twofold, I should say, in the second quarter, with 2.9 compared to 6.5 million. That year-to-date participant costs, or participant served, 27,000, also includes our Wagner Pizer program. And so, additionally, you can find a list of services in attachment 3 at the end of the slide. But another thing to note is I'm having technical difficulties with my slides here, but we'll keep moving. Let's see. I'll go to the next slide. So let's move to the state reserve budget. This is the item that's going to require review and approval. So when we look at last year's budget, or this current year that we're in, we had budgeted 19.4. That number changed from the handout that was sent out, and that's why I'm rolling through my presentation here. But the obligations and expenditures are at 9.3, or less than half of what was budgeted. And then the next bullets are the budgets that we had budgeted for. We had budgeted 7.5, or earmarked 7.5 for governor's priorities. which were things like to support reentry, rural area development, and things of that nature. Economic development was to support our partner deals with ECD to provide additional dollars to local boards, and we also have consolidated business grants that we put out there to support local businesses through the local boards. Then we had program evaluation and program monitoring and oversight of 1.7 and 1.35, and then ended it with 3.7 in systems administrations and obligations. And you see there, versus what was earmarked and what was actually either obligated or expended, there was about $10 million that will actually roll over into this next budget. And there's just a lot of things in there. We had several initiatives. We had rural initiative about $3.5 million that we put out there. That kind of stalled. We had work-based learning and other career and training catered to youth and reentry initiatives as well. And they kind of either stalled or didn't launch, where they had restrictions to facilities and or just not access to those participants. And so based on that, we're proposing this year's budget, again, rolling over that unspent or unobligated portion from prior year budget. And the reason why we're able to do that is I think most of the board members know that our funds kind of have a 3-year shelf life for the majority of the funds that we're talking about here. And so we're able to roll that over. And so looking at the top section, those are the numbers that are going into the proposed budget, less the administration. And so what's left is $20.3 million. And we're proposing, 5 to 7 million in those governance priorities that we talked about. Economic development, again, supporting partner initiatives, additional funds to local boards and CBG contracting. And then we've added this performance/incentive-based contracts because we want, again, to have a way of providing additional funds where the best performance is going and where it's also needed the most. And so we're talking $3 million there. Program and monitoring and oversight, again, $1.3 million. And then systems administration, the 2.8 is basically maintenance, annual maintenance around our case management system. And then the grants management system was put on hold, but we're putting that back on here this year. And that vendor is actually looking at becoming a statewide vendor. So we're looking for some really good return on that investment. That brings that bucket to $3.8 million. And so if there are any questions on any of the categories, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ivan, this is Ronnie Brewer in the Greater Memphis region. And we talked a little bit about this in the Oversight Committee, but I did want to mention that we have some obligated funding that we should be spending that can be expended to kind of expand our marketing efforts in this area. And I know that I'd reached out to, Kyla in regards to that and just said, what are we doing? Because I know we need to be a little bit more creative. And she told me that she had, put in some requests, and I asked her to forward the request to me. And so she has in fact requested usage of funds in a way that we can get more information out. But it appears that we're waiting on some policy around like how that can be done, or permission about how that could be done. And so I know that that's something that is keeping us from spending some of our obligated funds. And I'm just curious, is this happening other places? And, when can we expect the opportunity to be able to move forward with that?
Yes, and so I know that policy, it's actually guidance, it's with our interim commissioner for final review, and it should probably be ready for dissemination as early as next week. There's also, I know that a statewide initiative around outreach And so I think the combination of the two will help local boards make some better decisions around how they utilize those dollars towards outreach.
That sounds great. And I just want to say, welcome, Commissioner, to our sense of urgency.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized just to add some clarification to Ronnie's question?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So I just wanted to add just some clarifying language. So for the outreach, part of the reason that the policy has to precede the spend, as Ivan mentioned, federally, there are some restrictions around dollars for advertising and promotion. So we are working with our federal partners on establishing a plan for targeted outreach. Any dollars spent to advertise or market or promote programs must be under the performance of the award. So we have to make sure that it's very clean. So in other words, it's not an allowable use of funds to do branding unless it is to reach out to those groups who need specific services. So we walk a very fine line there. So Ronnie, I really appreciate your question. So we want to make sure that we can put the particular language in place and ask for a spend for our local board so that those dollars can directly be tied into a return on participants who will then enroll and subsequently receive the services they so critically rely upon. So we'll continue to work with the local areas and also keep the state board apprised as the workforce services team develops the governance concerning those dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Thomas. Appreciate that clarification. Okay, Ivan, I don't see other questions, so if you'll continue.
So then I guess there's a need to, well, should we cover the rapid response as well and then look for a vote, Chairman?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So as Chairman Hatcher had mentioned, we have, and according to our state policy, when we look at changing the factors in our funding allocation, it requires approval at the Oversight Committee level. And so we are proposing a change to our dislocated worker funding allocation in two areas. One, in the rapid response. That rapid response has a reserve associated with it of up to 25% of our dislocated worker dollars can be utilized for rapid response activity. And so our factor has been at 10 for the last few years. We're asking that that factor be elevated to the maximum of 25%. This request is to support businesses, our business services team, and with emphasis on layoff aversion. And also there's a weighted factor of declining industries, and over the last few years we've seen significant increase in that. A lot of it attributable to COVID, and so we're asking to increase that weighted average from 7% to 14%. That again addresses those areas. That means that those areas who are harder, have a greater impact from declining industries will receive a little more funding. In the overall scheme, it's not a lot in the sense that some of the other factors have heavier weights, but it would address the declining industries increase for those areas impacted. So again, we're looking to for approval on increasing the rapid response reserve from 10% to 25% and increasing the weight on the declining industry factor from 7% to 14%.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion there. All right, I see a motion from E.L. Morton. And I see a second from Greg. All right, any discussion? My question to you, Ivan, is obviously it makes sense to allocate that to focus on the industries that are hardest hit right now. So that makes good sense. Are there, but the question is, are there other pieces that have to give up what they would normally be getting? And if so, what would those be?
Yes, sir. So that's a great question. Thank you. So two of the factors with the heaviest weighting are unemployment claims filed and unemployment rate. And so they were at 35 and 35, and they were both reduced to 31 and 32 to account for the increase in declining industries. Overall, again, those areas, the change isn't as material. However, given the percentage increase, we wanted to the percentage increase regarding the declining industry factor, we wanted to increase that to reflect the change.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the vote, and what I'm asking for is any opposition or abstention. Otherwise, we will assume that everyone is in favor of making those allocation changes as Mr. Greenfield has presented. And seeing and hearing none, we will say that those allocations have been approved. So thank you. Ivan, anything else that you want to share with us?
We still have the vote on the state reserve budget itself, sir.
Yes, thank you. Keep going.
And so those are the proposed allocations for the 20.3, and we just need approval on that, sir, to implement this budget for the upcoming year.
Okay, so looking for then a motion to approve that budget. See a motion from Ben Ferguson. And I see a second from Vonda McDaniel. Any discussion about the motion to approve that budget as presented? Okay, and seeing none, we'll ask for opposition and abstention. Otherwise, we'll assume that everyone is in favor of the reserve funds budget. And seeing none, we'll say that that has been approved.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. And lastly, we'd like to just end on some key highlights of some of the funding that we have currently going. And our Fort Campbell grant, again, that's a joint effort with Kentucky, where we received $7.7 million to support transitioning soldiers. We had that award extended this year, and we're able to up the number of enrolls and exceed actually the budgeted from the 1,440 that you see there to 1,536 enrolled, with 428 of those being spouses that were supported. There's a plus 80% job placement rate on that for those individuals, and the average hourly wage there is $21.70. So it's very good initiative there. Also, we received CARES Act dollars. We talked about this in the last budget meeting, of 9.5 at the agency level, or at the divisional level, I should say. Those funds, 4.1 of that went to really being utilized to support connecting participants to work, getting them back to work quicker, and supporting on-the-job training and upskilling of workers at the employer level of $2.8 million. and also to enhance our virtual American Job Center, which, you know, like if anybody knows, you go to your dentist's office, you can be in the car and text back and forth. And so we want to have some similar functionality at the state level where we can do scheduling and text messaging and the like. And we're well on the way for that as well. And then the last one there is that it's also CARES related. It's a dislocated worker grant that's aimed at providing short-term relief unemployment, and then also some employment and training services as well. And we've been able to support 272 participants and help or have 155 government sites cleaned. And so there's still a lot of work to be done under that award, but we're moving in the right direction. So, and that concludes my report, Chairman Berry. Thank you.
Very good. I appreciate those highlights. Other questions for Ivan?
This is Ann Hatcher. I have a question.
Yes.
I may have seen this National Dislocated Worker Grant associated with COVID data before. So I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly. This is about $15 million for 1,500 people. So we're looking at about $10,000 per person served. That's I would imagine a significant amount of money. Can you talk a little bit more about how they're seeing those funds, how that's showing up for them? How is it really being used?
Primarily to provide cleanup services and delivery services to people in need, where we're not allowed to purchase food, but you can actually deliver food to vulnerable populations, things of that nature. And so you're seeing a lot of the short-term employment in those types of occupations.
So we're employing these 1,500 people to deliver food to other people?
And situation or clean sites, or yes, it would be short-term work, and the usually the local board is the employer of record, and they work with the site to track time and things of that nature. But it's the hours are capped at 2,080 hours, or 20,000 per participant.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Very good. Thank you, Ivan. I appreciate the detail of that report and the questions you've answered and clarified for us.
Thank you, Chairman Berry.
And with that, I think we have achieved all of our objectives for today's meeting. So I appreciate, again, everyone's attendance, and just really thank you for the continued work. I know it's been a while since we've met, but it's obvious that the work hasn't stopped. So thank you to everyone who's made that possible, especially with the transition from one set of rules to a new set of rules recently passed, and making sure that all went smoothly. So thanks for keeping us informed and staying on top of this. Coming up, our next board meeting is slated for June 18th, and we'll get details of that meeting as soon as possible. So thank you for your participation. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn today?
I did have a question. So you said to expect like a list of expectations, to set up expectations for a board, for the board members. And you said that we should be expecting that this week, and is it coming from Eiler?
No, what you'll be getting from Eiler today is the change to the bylaws.
Okay.
And that just shows that membership increase that we talked about. And then at subsequent meetings, we'll be talking about those new standards that we'll be setting for our board and for the local boards as well. So those won't be coming quite as soon, but you'll be hearing about them as we progress through the year.
Should we, as board members, should we give some suggestions on what those should be?
Well, again, we're going to base it on the document that other states
That we
have
were
used.
read?
But
Okay.
yeah, but I think we'll have some, we'll present that, and I think we'll have some discussion about, does that look okay? Does that include everything that we want on it? So I think we'll have the opportunity to input, is this the right set of metrics we're looking for? Is this the right format we need it in? But let's wait and see until we have that straw man to look at, and then we'll make those adjustments from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Deputy Thomas, does that sound accurate?
You nailed it, Chairman Barry. We'll make sure we have the overall document available for distribution. And to your point, it's really a template, but each state workforce board across the country gets to add their own narrative. And so you'll certainly have an opportunity to do that.
Yep. Very good. Excellent question. Thank you for asking it and helping us clarify that. All right. I hope everyone has a great spring. And again, appreciate your time and contribution. It's a pleasure to be a part of this group, and I just enjoy hearing everyone talk and seeing the work that's being done on behalf of the state and on behalf of our workforce in Tennessee. So thank you, guys. Y'all have a great spring.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thank you.